Glutide being used earlier for diabetes, now for weight loss?
Yes, that's a great answer. We also have right. We also have sildenafil. That is another classical example, and we are lucky enough to live in an era where we saw. So these things, some of them have been, by coincidence they had found out. Some failed, and then they found out. Some had been experimented, and then they found out. But we are also lucky to be in an era where we had a malarial drug be repurposed into a COVID drug. If you guys remember, HCQ was repurposed. So for that to happen, and that happened because that happened via AI, and that happened on a very faster scale compared to the other repurposing. So yeah. So what I'm asking you guys to do for today is, for one day, look at patients as a set of the data that they can give you. Why are we looking beyond symptoms? I will come to in a bit, but this is what the lens has shifted because of omics, because patients can be seen as integrated organisms. So in a healthy person, they have a genome, which is their DNA. They have an epigenome, which is the histone marks which tell how genes are expressed. We have the transcriptome, which tells what is active currently in the genome. And then we have the proteome and the metabolome. And now the patience is done. Every tissue can be seen as a community of cells in a shared environment. Earlier, cancer drugs were directed only towards the tumor tissues and tumor cells, but we all know that the tumor microenvironment is a very important part of cancer. So that also should be taken into account. Tissue should be treated as a community of cells. Then we have each cell also at the single cell level. Each cell can function as a molecular report that we can read and measure. The most important thing that you'd be taking away from today's session is that the cells, the tissues, and patients are readable and measurable today on uh, very, molecular level. Okay, so before I go into this, let's quickly talk about what sort of omics. Let's say we've talked about genomics, proteomics. Now, what sort have you already, seen in your experience as a medical student so far? Where have you heard the words genomics, proteomics, metabolomics? Anybody? Great. Molecular diagnostics, inflammasome. Right. Molecular diagnosis is a very good point because genetic tests, right, are very important when it comes to inherited disorders, genetic disorders, and that's the only way to diagnose them, apart from a very few not very reliable physical characteristics. Uh, but then that's not the only way we can do this. So since the Human Genome Project happened, since the first genome came out, the human genome, even before that, there were model organism genomes that came out. And since then, people have said, why not? Now that we are able to measure genes, why not measure proteins? And then why not measure metabolites? So with that, a huge host of data sets came out that we are able to measure and actually analyze today. So let's see about the different layers and lenses of biological information. This is a revolution in biology because we are able to move from microscopes to Western blots to omics. I hope you understand the difference in scale that we are seeing over here. Microscopes give you a visual picture. Western blots and PCRs, some of them are Western blot is semi-quantitative, PCR is quantitative, but sometimes unreliable and prone to error. But these only tell presence or absence to a lot, to a great extent. What we are able to do in omics is we are able to quantify it with the numbers. So what are the layers in this? So the layers go like this. So first we have the genome. The mutations that you guys guessed fall into the genome category. Mutations can be of two types: mutations that you are born with and mutations that you gain during your lifetime because of replication errors and so on. Then transcriptome has become very, very important because the first thing that you can see through omics that changes in a diseased state or in an untreated or a treated condition is the transcriptome. Transcriptome is the dynamic set of genes that are expressed at any given time in your body. Transcriptome also tells you the difference between, let's say, an eye tissue and a heart tissue, right? Can anybody tell me why there is the difference between an eye tissue and a heart tissue, although the genome is same in all the tissues? Great. Right. So differential expression and epigenetic regulation. Epigenetic regulation is one of the causes for differential gene expression. It basically means that two different tissues will produce different kinds of gene. Two different cells also can produce different kinds of genes at any given point. Proteome covers all the proteins and even immunological molecules that are produced, any kind of proteins, amino acids, peptides. And metabolome is about the cells, cellular processes that are happening. So all these give insights into how, so these are bioinformatics or omics layers. Then more latest, what we see is the lenses. I'll cover them quickly through each. So bulk versus single cells, right? So a classic example for why we should have bulk versus single cells. So far, you can see that if I take a biopsy of a tissue, there you're looking at a bulk of cells together. You're not exactly looking at each cell. You can see cells, but you are still gaining insights from a bulk of cells. So bulk versus single cell, here I can take a great example of cancer. Can anybody again tell me what one of the most heterogeneous cancers? Cancers are heterogeneous. So can you tell me, give me some examples of cancers that are notoriously heterogeneous? They're known to have different types, subtypes, sometimes even in the same person. Yes, breast cancer is one of the most lung too. Ovarian as well, but breast and lung are like notoriously heterogeneous. That means the same patient will have different. So why do a bulk versus single cell? Is that a bulk expression analysis will give you at any point a snapshot of how the whole tissue is responding to a condition, let's say an environment, to treatment, or anything. It's called sensitivity of the cells. But if you want to understand heterogeneity of what subpopulations of cells are there, especially I think in melanoma, you see you prescribe a drug against one, let's say, protein target, and then quickly within months the patient is known to become resistant to these drugs. What causes that? The main reason over there is that there is this clonal evolution of cells that happens, is that cells have small differences within them, and whichever cells are resistant to a particular drug are selected, evolutionarily selected, and then expanded in the population. Because this sort of clonal expansion happens, we see that cancer tissues are heterogeneous, and that is why we have to study single cell. At single cell level, we are able to look into each cell and have the entire genome, entire transcriptome, entire proteome, entire metabolome of every cell. Imagine what that kind of data can do, help you. And then we have time series data. Time series data is very important, especially in, let's say, cancer development, stem cells to cancer cells. Then developmental biology, where you study from zygote to different cell types, or even in animal embryos when people study the blastocyst and all. So that having the whole of these layers at each stage of this time series also helps in, this is called trajectory tracing, where you track basically how the cell is behaving. You will note that this is one of the most dynamic ways to track a cell, through disease, through development. Next, this is very, very recent. I think in the last 4 5 years, it has boomed. It's called spatial. Not only will you know how much of something is produced, in spatial, you're able to tell which cell is present where. This is a mouse embryo, and they've colored different cells with different, molecules, and then you can see the distribution of different cells at any given point. We're also able to track regulation, and one of the most important intersection point of omics and AI is networks. How can you represent a cell as networks? So, does anybody have an idea of why cells are related to networks in any way, or diseases are related to networks in any way? Okay, cell-cell communication. Okay. More than cell-cell communication, I'll come to why network biology is important in a second. Let me go to right. So now what we've established so far is that from a patient, you can't. It's not the only thing that you can take is their blood sample for some clinical tests. You can take histopathological images. You can take a report from them about their symptoms. Apart from these things, these are all the things that we can take. I have defined most of them for you. Microbiomics is basically tracking the microbiome through the gut, through different organs on the skin, all of this. We have metabolomics. Lipidomics is another very recent addition where we try to understand lipid composition of cancer cells because they metastasize and the lipid composition changes. Imaging. So now we'll do a fun activity quickly. We'll do the blind test. Okay, you can unmute and talk. What I want you to do is imagine that you are in a blind diagnosis where you can't see the person, but you have the only information you have is that the person has cancer. So I would like to, you don't even know the sex of the person, you don't know the symptoms, anything, you just know that they have cancer and you have to prescribe a drug. Now, I'd like you guys to imagine how you will use each of these. You have all this data about the patient. So somebody has taken their blood and sequenced it and everything. So what would you do? How would you relate this to your, prognosis and diagnosis? Okay, karyotyping is one way. Can you think about how genomics can help identify? See, you don't even know what type of cancer it is. How will you give them a drug, right? If somebody wants to volunteer and help me answer questions, then that'll also be great. I would appreciate a volunteer as well. Site of defect mutation, okay. How would genomics give you the site of mutation, do you think? Yeah, SNPs is a good point. Early diagnosis is still not benchmarked properly. Yeah, so early diagnosis is not yet a reality that you want to believe. Manoranjan is right. If BRCA is found, we can guess that it's breast cancer. So we have some markers in literature for a lot of cancer types. Some of them are common across cancer, like T53, P10. Some pathways are established. Some of them are very exactly proto-oncogenes and oncogenes, were specific to different types of cancers. What I can do, I can run a genomics analysis, open and see what all variations are there in the person, compare it to a normal genome, and then find out what cancer it could be. Now you've established the cancer type, let's say. How would you know, what kinds of proteins are being expressed in the cancer? Or how, usually one of the important things in cancer is like, especially in colorectal cancer or any cancer, you see that a person lose weight, or, the cancer cells are retrieving nutrition from somewhere. How would you, for example, establish that? What would you target immediately to stop the growth? of the cancer. How would you know what biomarker to produce? So should you give like BRAF drugs, or what sort of drugs are you going to give? How would you know that? So basically my question is, which protein, against which protein target are you going to prescribe drugs? Okay, so the reason I brought up this question and why this blind test is important is that for years diagnosis has occurred one way, and cancers are increasingly becoming heterogeneous, right? So to understand your patient is very important, and omics is able to enable us to do that today. So if I wanted to understand which protein is the most active, see, that's the usual thing, right? We first find out which protein is the most active, or which pathway is the most active in that particular cancer, and then prescribe a drug against a known target. So what I would do is run a quick transcriptomics analysis on it. That way I'll get at that given point in that disease state what all genes are being expressed, right? I will do a bulk transcriptomics analysis. That means I'll take a whole tissue and then extract RNA from it and mRNA from it, and then do. And from that, what will I get? I'll compare it to a normal genome. Normal transcriptome, and I'll get what all genes are not being expressed properly. And from that, I'll see if all of these genes are from a same pathway or not, or at least maybe 3-4 of these genes are from one pathway. Let's say all of these are from the JAK-STAT, like 4 of them are from the JAK-STAT pathway. So I know that in that particular cancer, JAK-STAT pathway is active, and I'm not relying on what is already told as the basis in literature. Let's say maybe literature says some other pathway is active, and maybe you prescribe the drug, maybe the person goes through rounds of chemotherapy, but the cancer is not responding. This way you will know exactly what kind of pathway to target. Similarly, you will do proteomics, microbiomics, especially in diseases like Crohn's disease. I'm sure you know that it affects multiple areas of this. Recent research has shown that there are some mutations that Crohn's disease is because of. So you can use genomics, you can use transcriptomics, because it's in the gut. You can use my gut microbiome to understand exactly which bacteria is in a deficit in this. So this is, and now once we've done this blind test, right, I would now ask you to think, when you're free, once this is done, given that you have the existing methods of diagnosis, given that you have blood tests, given that you have images, given that you have histopathology, how would these methods help you make better diagnosis? Like, add this on to existing methods and see how they can help you make better diagnosis and take better decisions. I would like to talk now about multi-omics, because like they say, no man is an island, no cell is an island, no pathway is an island, no omics layer is an island, and one disease can have many truths. The point of this is that none of these are, like somebody said, cell-cell communication, right? None of these are isolated systems. You cannot, we cannot stop at one layer and say, okay, I've seen the genomics level, and now I can, that is enough for me to get a complete picture of the disease. Cancer is a great example again. You will see a lot of mutations. We all accumulate mutations through our lifetime, but cancer presents differently in different people. Cancer might not even present in some. For example, smoking is one thing. Some populations are susceptible to cancer even if they don't smoke. Smoking increases your susceptibility to cancer because of environmental effects on genome, right? So none of these layers are isolated. All of these layers are linked, and that is what we call multiomics. And one disease now has many truths. So this is what we discussed. Genomics talks about who is susceptible to a disease. Bulk transcriptomics, like I said, which pathways are active at a given point. Single cell talks about which specific cells are responsible if there is resistance, drug resistance in your patient, which specific cells are responsible. If metastasis has happened, which set of cells has metastasized. Spatial tells where in tissue it happens. This is very useful for like developmental trajectory tracking, stem cell development. You can know how the cells are moving in an embryo because a lot of migration happens. Which signals are being executed is proteomics. So you see which of the genes expressed have actually made proteins. Then we have metabolomics and microbiome. Right. So let me quickly show you one such. So you know that a lot of data for till now we've understood that a lot of data is being generated. There are layers, there are lenses, and everything. Let me quickly show you the nature of the data that is available to us and the extent. Okay, I'll just share my screen. Can everybody see this?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so uh, right. What I'm showing you is the National Cancer Institute's data portal. What they do is they have a repository and a computational platform for understanding cancer, clinical progression, response to therapy as well. What you can see is the data that has been accumulated by multiple labs, hospitals, and other institutions across the world and has been, brought together into a repository. See, in adrenal, look at these are all the major primary sites. This is majorly for a cancer portal, so you can see all cancer primary sites, and under each you can see how many cases have been documented. Case is one person, so and then across this you have 91 projects, 69 primary sites, these 50,000 cases, this much amount of files to download, which is available, genes and mutations that have been covered. You can actually go into each of these and then create a cohort and kind of understand what. So you can create your cohort under just I selected adrenal gland cancer. Under adrenal gland cancer, you have clinical data analysis, you have cohort level mutation frequencies that are, so what they do is in these cases they measure how many of them have what mutations and then give the frequency of occurrence of these mutations. This will help later on to map a new gene, a new disease as well. Copy numbers, gene expression, this is the bulk I was talking about, single cell RNA sequencing, and you can look at this data, you can ask for a demo, you can download the data and do your own analysis. Another so these are just one or two data sets that I'll be showing you, but we have a whole host of data sets which are available, databases at all the four omics layers that I showed you and all the lenses as well, bulk, single, time series. There's a huge amount of data available and it's all there. A lot of it is public for usage by all sorts of professionals and for research. So this is part one, and I'll quickly summarize what we understood. Omics will give new context to a disease. Earlier, disease context was limited to physical symptoms and semi-quantitative and quantitative studies, but now we have a deeper lens into the biology behind the disease. But as I showed you data, now there are different databases, there are different kinds of data that is available, and then this data is huge. The amount of data that I just showed you across those many cancers and across, like the one I showed you had like around 770 cases. What if there are more patients? Sometimes single cell analysis have like tens of thousands of cells, sometimes it's 1 lakh cells that are, so in each cell you have the genomic data. So how are we going to make sense of this data, right? Has anybody worked with such a huge data set before? If yes, let me know. If no, also let me know. Or what is the maximum amount of number of patients or data have you handled at the same time I'm talking about? Right, right. Thanks. So that's the thing. The thing, what we do in omics, what bioinformaticians do, is that we try to take all of these data sets together, what is required and relevant, and then we try to get some insight about this. Right. So does anybody have a clue why we are using so many data sets? Like, why is there a need? Can't we just use one person's data, or just like for one disease, I'll have one person, and then that's it. Enough, right? Reduce errors for what? Pattern is a good word. Reducing error is also good. Right. So the thing is, first of all, we know that there are 3.8 billion base pairs in human DNA. That means 3.8 billion letters of ATGC repetitions that are there. And out of them, we have around 15 to 20,000 genes. Proteins are way more are on a way more number than that. We also have microbes inside our body, and this is the entire. In just one body, we have so many variations. And if you sensitivity of data is a good answer. Epidemiology. I'll come to epidemiology in a bit. Epidemiology is also a great answer. So there are, let's say, two broad things, right? Within a person, there are a lot of cells. There are a lot of gene expression patterns within each cell. That is one thing. But also within different people having diseases, how is the disease manifesting? Clearly, although the symptoms are common, clearly at the molecular level, it's not the same for everybody. Right? This is not just like a one mutation disorder, like maybe Down syndrome or something like that. But in cases like cancer, Alzheimer's, there are different mutations. Diabetes is one thing. Diabetes is also linked to multiple locus on the genome. So that is very important. One thing is when you're trying to gain insights, right? Earlier it was done through detailed experimentation, but now we are using the power of statistics and pattern recognition to understand this. So which loosely means that in a given population, if I want to conduct a test, I want to understand what are the most frequent mutations in lung cancer, then maybe I'll take at least 100 different people and then get genome data for all of them, and